Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. So tonight we do have available Amharic and Spanish interpretation. And at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the globe or the more. If you click on that, you'll see interpretation. Please click the language that works for you. So we'll give everybody a chance to move into their interpretation rooms. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Beth Mansaranis, and I am the Family Support Services Coordinator for Montgomery County Public Schools. So glad to see so many of you tonight. We have the agenda up for you, which I will not read. Just take a second to look through it, and then we will move on to the next slide. At this point, I'd like to welcome our MCPS staff and ask them to introduce themselves, please.
Good evening. This is Jada Langston, Director of Special Education Services. Nice to be with you this evening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Latanya Williams, Acting Supervisor of Special Education Services.
Okay, and thank you. And now I believe we only have one of our co-chairs tonight, but we'll go ahead and do the welcome.
Hi, everyone. Welcome this evening. I'm Brooke Levy. I'm one of the co-chairs for SECAC. And I have three children, two who have already graduated from MCPS and one who is receiving special education services currently where we live up county. Welcome.
And I'm not sure, our first person is Dr. Cage. I'm not sure if she's arrived yet. So we're going to go ahead and just keep it moving. We're going to move into our first presentation tonight. We've had some conversation around alternative learning outcomes. And so I'd like to welcome Ashley Doyle and Dawn Hanna to take over this part of the meeting.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here today. I'm Ashley Doyle. I'm the Supervisor for Alternate Learning Outcome Services, and I'm joined by...
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Dawn Hanna. I am one of the instructional specialists on our team supporting our services. Nice to see everybody.
Great, next slide. So we've received some questions from the community, and tonight we're going to be talking about navigating, and I see a typo and I apologize, navigating the path together, a parent's guide to the alternate learning outcomes in Montgomery County Public Schools. Next slide. So when we talk about the ALO framework, we're really talking about what that is, why it's important, and how that's important. And so when we talk about the framework, that's the overview of the curricular alignment, which is designed to provide high quality modified academic instruction for students with complex needs. Why is this important? It is important to ensure that all of our students, regardless of their cognitive needs or disabilities, have access to rigorous grade-aligned content, which will prepare them for post-secondary successes. And how we're going to get there is by using the essential elements which are aligned with the Maryland General Education Scope and Sequence, supported by a resource we will be discussing tonight, which is the refrigerator curricula, which are a brief connection that you will have at home that align the curricular standards and the scope by marking period. So in the alternate education framework, this really provides specialized instruction and assessment for students with our most significant cognitive disabilities. It is aligned with the Maryland College and Career Readiness Standards, often seen as the acronym MCCRS, through modified essential elements, the acronym EE, and that is aligned to the standards. It focuses on individualized, functional, and academic goals designed for students who require extensive modifications and supports. Some of the key aspects of the alternate framework are that we have a very specific target audience of students who have significant cognitive disabilities and require extensive, direct, individualized instruction to acquire, maintain, and then generalize their skills. The instructional focus uses those essential elements, which are reduced complexity versions of the core grade level standards, MCCRS, or the next generation science standards with the essential elements. So it all comes together. There's a lot of acronyms, but we're really here to make sure that you all understand that it's all aligned to the curriculum. That said, there's also assessment, the state assessments, which our students are assessed using the dynamic learning maps, which is the alternate assessment rather than the general education Maryland comprehensive assessments that students take in grades 3 through 8 and grade 11. Part of that process, it includes an eligibility and consent review. Eligibility is based on the student's cognitive, academic, and adaptive performance data, which is not linked solely to a specific disability label, and it requires an annual review of that process as well as parental consent. So it's two-prong. One is the eligibility, and the secondary being your consent as the parent. Some of those outcomes for our students are that our students are participating in the alternate framework, are generally working towards a Maryland High School Certificate of Program Completion, rather than a diploma. And although they are not entirely excluded from seeking a diploma, the requirements of a diploma are comprehensive and build on different areas of the scope and sequences of the general education curriculum. And when students are working on the alternate framework over a long period of time, there's a reduced depth, breadth, and complexity, which can mean that a high school diploma is less likely to be the outcome. The goals are to ensure access to the general education curriculum while focusing on communicative competence and functional academic skills. These decisions are data-driven, made by IEP teams, including a review of academic and individualized assessments and data on progress. This framework ensures that students with the most significant cognitive disabilities are included in the educational system and receive instruction tailored to their unique needs. As I've been sharing this information, some additional resources have been in the chat, and we're going to go on to the next slide.
Okay. So yes, I did load some links into the chat there. Those are some helpful resources. Many of them are available in multiple languages. Once you click on the links, some documents might ask you what your preferred language is. So those are there. Those are there for you to review. So I want to take a minute to just kind of talk about breaking the acronym code. There are a lot of acronyms in both the state and with MCPS, specifically for special education services. So when we talk about ALO, you'll hear that a lot, alternate learning outcomes. This is also known as the alternate framework. Our alternate learning outcomes are also synonymous with alternate academic achievement standards. That's a mouthful. So you might hear AAAS. That's what that's referring to, alternate academic achievement standards. Those terms are interchangeable with each other. So in MCPS, we call our alternate standards alternate learning outcomes. Those outcomes are our essential elements, which really are the essential elements of the general education standards. So those are those modifications that have been made to the general education standards to make them more accessible for our students with significant cognitive disabilities. So again, thinking about the core kind of most salient pieces of each curriculum standard, those are our essential elements, or as you might see, EEs, I think I heard Ashley reference. Some of our other acronyms, you might hear MCCRS. Those are our Maryland College and Career Ready Standards. In addition, we have our NGSS, which are our Next Generation Science Standards. Don't worry, we're going to quiz you later on all of these. So again, we have our essential elements, which are aligned to those Maryland College and Career Ready Standards and our Next Generation Science Standards. And those standards and progress on, towards those standards are measured by our dynamic learning maps. Though that is our alternate assessment. So you might hear DLM. Those are our dynamic learning maps. Again, our alternate assessment. Lastly, you might hear the acronym SCD, which stands for Significant Cognitive Disability. So again, in meetings when, some of our multidisciplinary team members, kind of start spouting some of these acronyms of rapid fire. First of all, if you're not sure what they mean, please pause us because we get lost in the sauce, I'll say, when we start, talking really passionately about student needs and things like that. But this just kind of gives you a tip on what some of those core acronyms might be referring to. All right, next slide.
Great. And so we selected this quote because we think this is one of the core elements of all of special education services, knowing that inclusion is not a program, it's not a staff member, it's not an event. Inclusion is the organizational commitment, so that it always has to start from the top down. And we can go on to the next slide. So in terms of a pillar of our reforms or our next steps in Montgomery County Public Schools, we're always presuming competence. This means that we are ensuring that our students are who have multi-diverse and very dynamic communication needs. We know that some students communicate in many different ways, and all students are able to make progress. All students are able to meet long and short-term goals, and that the outcomes for students are individualized, and there is always a pathway there. So we wanted to share with all of us who are here and those that will view this video in the future that the least dangerous assumption is a theory that developed in the early 1980s. And according to Donnellian, the criterion for the least dangerous assumption holds in that the absence of conclusive data, educational decisions ought to be based on assumptions that, if they were incorrect, would have the least dangerous effect on the likelihood of students would be able to function independently as adults. So that evidence is supported by multiple different areas and could influence student achievement. In current policy environments where we're looking at our student needs with so many different expectations, beyond just a student individual needs or disability category, it's really important that at the core of it, we have high expectations that we set for all students. You can go on to the next slide, please. In that vein, we are looking at planning for accessibility, which really means that we are looking at determining the student. It's a flow, so it's a multi-step process, but it all circles back to the very beginning of always starting with the access points for a student. I'm just going to pause because I see in the chat that someone cannot hear.
You're fine. You're fine.
Great. Thank you.
We can hear you. We're not sure if it's Grace's computer or what, but yeah.
Thank you. So starting with the planning process of determining the grade level standards, which is our general curriculum for all students, looking at where that on-ramp would be of instructional planning and where the student's emerging or readiness level is, and then planning around key elements that may be linked or connected to critical life skills, that are aligned to the curriculum standard. And then that would build on next identifying the alternate achievement standard that is aligned, which we would look at the essential elements for that connection and that on-ramp for planning for that accessibility of the instruction for for a student on the alternate framework. The next level to that stage is making sure that there is the supports and the accommodations in the student's individual program are specific to them, that can be adapted, differentiated, and modified for access to the instruction, but also for assessments, or really look at different pathways to assess learning that's ongoing. And then the last step before it really goes back to that cycle through is making sure that there are evidence-based instructional strategies and curricular resources that are implemented across all of the instructional and community settings that really are differentiated based on that individual's need, and at the pacing can be adjusted or moved faster or slower, or specific to the learning task at hand. Next slide.
Okay, so getting back to one of the previous slides where we had our quote about inclusion, I kind of want to kind of circle back to that because it'll provide like a frame of reference for this slide. So thinking about, inclusion is not a program, it's not one staff member, it's not an event. It really is an organizational commitment, and it starts from the top down. And so that leads us to this kind of belief and, another, core part of just our service delivery and, philosophy and all of that is that all means all. So all of our students are general education students first. And again, we believe that special education is a service. It's not a place. It is a service that is provided, across multiple settings, multiple schools. But again, it's not a box. It's not a place. And so we want to really emphasize that our students are members of their schools and their school communities first. So, if whether they're at Laytonsville Elementary or Great Seneca Creek or Belmont Elementary, Stonegate Elementary, or, any of our high schools, they are students of those school communities first, and not simply identified by the services that they receive. And that's really important. Because with that kind of philosophy in mind, with that mindset, then that automatically builds that culture of inclusiveness and really, students feel it. I mean, you can feel it as soon as you walk into the walls of the building. So again, that's where strong leadership comes in. It is, at the heart and the foundation of, building a collaborative and inclusive environment. Post-secondary success, we talk a lot about being MCPS future ready. That applies just as much to, our students receiving special education services as, their peers in general education. It really is attainable for all students. We want our students to have, educators who are content experts, and, they are key to their success. They should be providing specially designed instruction and be supported both instructionally and professionally. Additionally, our family and community engagement is really critical. It is such an integral component of student success. Our students cannot succeed without your support. We can't succeed as educators without your support and your input. And so again, it really takes participation from and buy-in from all stakeholders. It's not just, that's why we have multidisciplinary teams. It's not just one person. It takes a school, it takes a community, not to sound cliche, but it really does take a village. And so, our students and our families are really at the heart of everything we do. We bring together our multidisciplinary teams, our teams, and our teachers and specialists, to design learning experiences that are specifically, for your child to provide that access. Ashley reviewed the accessibility planning process. That's the goal, is basically to provide access to the greatest extent possible to their least restrictive environment, access to the curriculum. That's what the IEP is for. That's what our services are designed to do, is all about access. And so by following, each child's very unique goals and, ensuring that they have the support they need to grow and thrive, again, always in their least restrictive environment. Next slide, please. Okay. And so that, brings us to kind of that inclusive mindset. And, we have to understand that this is very flexible. We have, the expectations that we have to be flexible with our services to meet all of the unique needs of our students. So when considering, those special education services, it's like the old mindset is here, on the slide. Can they be included? So rather than asking the question, can they be, think about how can they be? How can we design a system? How can we create the culture? How can we make participation meaningful? So, inclusion isn't just, again, it's not a place. It doesn't mean, a student is included in the physical space of the classroom. It means that they're engaged, they're participating with their peers. Those are all of our expectations. They're engaging socially, they're engaging with the instruction, even if it's significantly modified. And so again, it's really starts with that mindset. So on the slide, there's some strategies for flexible learning. Obviously, the more interaction with peers, the better. Students learn so much from each other, even probably more so than they do from their teachers. And so, and it goes both ways. The inclusion is not just beneficial for our students receiving special education services, it's beneficial for all students. And the research is really undeniable. And so, thinking about a creative way to use peers as those effective agents for engagement and feeling, building friendships and a sense of belonging. Teaching them how to use some of the communication supports that our students, require to communicate, whether it's a dynamic device that has multiple categories and is really fancy, or just, is using more of a low tech or a single switch, or, pictures or sign language or gestures or any of those things. But kind of having, providing those opportunities to where everyone has an understanding of the supports and is able to use them to engage with the student. So, thinking about our continuum of services, yes, we have service delivery models, but we have to be flexible with those models in order to meet your child's specific and very individual needs. And so we're not trying to kind of fit the student into the service. We're trying to build the services around the student with that flexibility. We are always trying to prioritizing inclusion for your child to obviously the greatest extent possible in their least restrictive environment. And that may look different from one student to the next, because again, we look at the individual child. Services may look different from year to year and from school to school based on your child's specific needs, because again, we have to be flexible to meet the needs of the students that we serve from one year to the next. Okay, next slide.
Great. And so, as I mentioned at the earlier start of this presentation, some resources that we're going to share with you in terms of the curriculum, the general education curriculum, is the refrigerator curricula. And so this is a great resource that you can use at home if you're wondering what the scope and the sequence is for the grade level of your child, or if you're looking at wondering where some of the back mapped or the earlier precursor skills are for the scope and sequence for the curriculum for that marking period. We know that for students who are on the alternate framework, that the modifications, the pacing, and the depth and breadth or the complexity of the curriculum is going to be reduced and modified to the student's individual needs. but there's connections to the curriculum, which, as we've talked about earlier, as the essential elements, as that connection, so that you can see where the skills are being focused on from the curriculum. The other connection that you'll see is the alignment to the indicators of state testing. So in general education, our students participate in the MCAP testing, which we're about to start that window very soon this spring. Our students who are working on the alternate framework participate in the ALT-MCAP, or the Dynamic Learning Maps assessment, which has a much longer assessment window, which starts in March and ends in May. And that way there's multiple and frequent opportunities to engage with the assessment with the teacher who knows your child well, to be able to get their input and capture their authentic responses as aligned to the instruction that's been provided. And so that is one of the connections that you'll see in terms of the general education curriculum, and the alternate framework would have the essential elements. So the other piece that is on this slide is that for students who are in general education, the pathway for post-secondary outcomes is working towards a high school diploma. And as I said earlier, our students who are working on the alternate framework and have been found eligible, and parents have provided their consent for instruction and assessment, are working towards a certificate of completion, which is another pathway towards post-secondary outcomes to help our students be ready for their career and post-secondary goals in the capacity that's important to the student, the family, and the planning process that is part of being a lifelong learner.
So really our goal is in thinking about that path to 21. We talk a lot about life after 21 and, again, being ready for the future. And so students, within the ALO framework are eligible and entitled to receive services through the age of 21. And, for those of you who have students in high school, obviously you've probably heard already from your transition support teacher that shifts after they exit our school system to eligibility. So it goes from entitlement to eligibility. And so our goal is to prepare our students to the greatest extent possible for integrated employment, for independent living skills, and for community participation. And we do that starting from kindergarten, or as long as they're with us until they exit. And so the skills that they are learning from elementary to middle to high school have direct alignments to one another. Our goal is for them to generalize or learn to generalize their skills that they're learning in the classroom, those academic skills, those functional skills, those skills leading to promote their independence, self-advocacy, communication, all of those things. Our goal is for them to be able to generalize those skills across settings. So not just settings within the school building or at home, but also into the real world in the community. And that's a big part of our community-based instruction is to start to teach that generalization, is to, apply the math skills they're learning and apply the reading skills they're learning into real world contexts. And so again, that is our goal. We want our students to be resilient. We want them to thrive as they get into high school. We are, they have both in school and then off-site job experiences. We're always, looking at their interests, even if it starts as a rec leisure interest. Those interests, when you build upon them, could evolve into a vocational interest. So we're always asking them, what it is that they want to do after they graduate. So we focus a lot on those employment opportunities, especially as they get older. We're always working on some of those independent living skills, activities of daily living. Again, communication is huge. We talk about, communicative competence a lot. That is our number one goal because everything comes through communication. That is the main the main source of just lifelong independence. And then building that community participation. But it really, that looks different for every child. Some of our students go on to experience post-secondary opportunities at different community colleges and universities. Different universities are creating programs and services for our students all the time. It's actually really exciting. We're preparing them for employment. We're preparing them for independent living to the greatest extent possible. And so, with that, I will turn it back over to Ashley for our summary.
Great, thank you. Next slide. So in summary, in all of the areas that we have talked about, one of the biggest things that you as parents can always do, and we want to see more of and can't do it without you, is partnering with your school teams and using the refrigerator curricula to ask how that grade level theme is being adapted or modified for your child. So if you're wondering what the learning progression is or where the curriculum connection is, the refrigerator curriculum resource is a good on-ramp to that conversation for knowing some of that connection. Also, visiting our Montgomery County Public Schools special education website. We have lots of resources for you all as families in our community that are specific to all special education, but also more specifically the alternate academic achievement standards. So in closing, if you want to book a time to meet with me because you have some individual student-specific questions, I've included my booking link here, which is the QR code. You're welcome to use your phone, and it'll take you directly to a link to book a time to meet with me. And I look forward to partnering with you and supporting you on behalf of your children in the district. And we are always here to help.
Thank you so much to Ashley and Dawn. We appreciate your expertise tonight. Parents, I'm going to give you, actually, Derek, can you go back 1 second? Just in case you have questions, you can use that scanner that Ashley shared. You can also find both of them on their emails. So, and if you have any other questions, you can certainly reach out to me. All right, so I think now we're going to move into Dr. Williams, who's going to do a little follow-up for us on specially designed instruction.
Awesome. I'm excited to be back. All right, so we're going to dig a little deeper into specially designed instruction. And remember, with this presentation, we're going to refer to that as SDIs. So here, I wanted to make sure I listened to everything you guys requested. So I want us to look at some common language, and then how does this actually look throughout the IEP document? Oh, next slide. So as we're going through this, I want everyone to think about this question. What is being taught differently, and how is instruction being adapted for the student? So throughout this presentation, you see how the word instruction is in bold blue print. All throughout this presentation, you're going to see the word instruction or any word related to that in bold and blue. And then hopefully at the end, we can have a better lens as far as what the SDI is. Next slide. So some key points here in understanding SDI. So again, it's not in one location. You have to look through the entire IEP. It's in several sections. So if we do that, I want us to really pinpoint, and at the bottom I listed 4 sections. Here, these are going to give us the SDI clues. So if we look at the highlighted phrase here, SDI clues, because we hear specially designed instruction a lot, and we look for it specifically in the IEP, but you're not going to see it there. So throughout this presentation, we're going to look for the common language that's going to give you a clue that we're talking about SDI. So specifically in the IEP, we're going to look at the present levels, goals and objectives, services, and sub-aids. Next slide. So present levels, this is the foundation of the IEP. This drives all points, the whole purpose of the IEP. This tells us where the student is currently functioning. So it looks at not only the student's needs, but it looks at the strengths because we need that baseline. And then it also tells how the disability is actually impacting their access to learning. So all in all, the present levels tells us the why. Like, why are we even developing this IEP in the first place? So in this particular part of the IEP, the SDI connections here, the SDI must always connect with the present level. So when you get in an IEP meeting and we're talking about this particular section, I want you to think specifically of the common language examples. So you may hear in the meeting the team saying targeted instruction in decoding or comprehension. You may also hear the student needs instruction in self-regulation strategies, or they need help or instruction with executive functioning. So as you're in the IEP meetings and you're hearing this language, specifically teaching or instruction, that's a clue that they're talking about specially designed instruction. Next slide. So in the IEP, that complicated document, in this red circle, that's the subject line. Like, that's when you know you're under the present levels. So this is a document, and it's not usually this simple. It's filled with a bunch of words. This is where you're going to see the most writing in the narrative in the IEP. When you get in the IEP meeting, this is where you want to spend time. So as you're going through this section of the IEP, please, please, please listen for those words around instruction and the SDIs. Specifically, the second visual here, where it says parent input, your input too is a part of the present levels. So this is where you're talking about the strengths and weaknesses of your child, but then you also can talk about what instructional strategies, what are some things that works for your child, because you know your child best. So just make sure when we're in a meeting, this IEP document, the present level sections, that you definitely take your time and share your input as well, because we want to know what you believe are the best SDIs for your student. So from present levels, which guide our IEP goals and objectives. So these are the expectations. So we have the goals and objectives, they're written, but we're going to focus specifically on the conditions in that goal. In the conditions, that is your other SDI hint. We want to look and see what is being said there. So at the beginning of the IEP goal, it usually starts with the word given. So given graphic organizers, given verbal prompts, given an instructional text. Those are all clues around SDI. So if we go over to the common language, you may also hear guided practice with immediate feedback. This is a popular one. The student may need the use of visual supports to teach concepts. All the language around scaffolding, that differentiation, that is a clue that specially designed instruction is included in the IEP. Next slide. So if we look at this document, so on this section of the goals and objectives page in the IEP, look specifically, and it's kind of small. There's a red underlined word where it says condition. So for every goal, every single IEP objective, the condition is required. So most times that starts with the word given. So it's given, and then it's a bunch of things listed, and then it'll be a comma. Pay specifically to that section of the IEP goal, and that too signals an SDI. Next slide. All right, so now we're going to go into the services section of the IEP. And this portion actually tells us what the service is, how long it's going to be implemented for that particular service, and then the where. So all three of those components is going to tell us how this IEP is going to be implemented. Here you may see the phrases with specialized instruction. This is also where you hear about inclusion or co-teaching. And then you're always going to want to know the frequency, the duration, and then the where, the location. Okay, so underneath of there, that SDI connection is going to explicitly tell you where and how often the specially designed instruction is going to occur. So under services, that's another key section of the IEP where you can get a lot of SDI hints. So for the common language, a lot of times we hear about those research-based interventions. That is a signal of specially designed instruction. Multi-sensory instruction, small group or individualized or one-on-one instruction. Those are all specially designed instruction includes. Next slide. So in the IEP, this is kind of what it looks like in MOIEP. So if you, I'm sorry guys, so I'm using my cursor to circle things and so you can see it, but I'll verbalize it. So if you go down underneath of the red arrow where it says special education classroom instruction, and then it says in general education in general education, that is the location. And then you have the time frame. And then you'll also see the frequency on the actual printed out version of the IEP too. So if you look at the second block, you can kind of see that. So again, this is where you're going to have a bunch of specially designed instructional clues. Next slide. All right, and then the sub-aids and accommodations. This is where it can become very confusing. So some key things to consider here, and hopefully I can decipher the two. So the key considerations is you want to make sure that we're keeping in mind that some SDIs can show up here under this section, but just be careful because not all accommodations are SDIs. So sometimes those accommodations where we may see the chunking of text or that explicit modeling, that does reflect instructional practices. Whereas you have some accommodations like the extra time, access to a calculator, those things are not changing instruction. That's just making sure the student can access the learning. So those right there, those are accommodations. Whereas if any of those accommodations kind of alter to the way that we're teaching or instructing, those would be under the umbrella of specially designed instruction because we're catering that instruction to the student's needs. All right, next slide. All right, so on the IEP, so this section specifically, this is what you'll see as far as the title. But if you go down, this is where you have those list of different strategies, different tools that your child would actually need. So for example, this first one, it says picture schedule. And if we had to look at that, would a picture schedule be an SCI or would that be more of like an accommodating tool? And then if we go to breaking down assignments into smaller units, with that, is that changing the instruction or the teaching, or is that just making sure the student is accessing? So as we're going through those with the supplementary aids, just keep asking yourself, is the instruction being adapted, or is this just increasing the access to learning? Next slide. Okay, so it's just a little bit more. I try to capture as many phrases that you may hear in a meeting. So for the instructional methods, is that explicit instruction. Look at all of these blue, bold words. Those are all of your SDI hints. The direct instruction with modeling. If we're using instruction to break things down, if we're scaffolding steps, those are all SDI hints. And then that individualized language, whereas if the student requires pre-teaching or pre-writing or reteaching for skills, that too is adapted instruction. That is another clue that's an SDI. So at the bottom, really look at that. SDIs are not a one size fit all. Instruction is not a one size fit all. So when you're in a meeting and you hear a general statement where it's like, oh, I do that for all students, you now can say, well, how are you providing specially designed instruction for my child specifically? Because when a student has an IEP, it's not a one size fit all. We have to make sure that we're specially designing that instruction to meet that student's needs. Next slide. I think this is my quiz. It is my quiz. All right, guys, so here we go. So this is your quiz. Let me see if you were paying attention. So I want you to take time and ask yourself, does this statement, so think about a meeting that you've been in and think about a statement that maybe someone from the school team shared. Does this statement describe how the teacher is teaching differently? So again, if you answer yes, that is an SDI, that's specially designed instruction. And if you answered no, that means it's more so for access or changing something in the environment, and that's an accommodation. Okay, so at the end, just remember SDIs change instruction and the accommodations only changes the access. It is going to take time. It's very confusing. But I think, and I'm hoping that this information provided a little bit more clarity on SDIs. But again, if you guys have questions, Mary Beth, you know I'm here.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. And next slide, I want to make sure that was it. Yep.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
everyone.
much, Dr. Williams. We appreciate you. Parents, I know that we've talked a lot this year about STI because I think the acronym and the verbiage itself sort of threw people. And so I think we've done a lot of unpacking over the last several meetings. That is not to say that we've unpacked everything. So if you have any questions, you can add that to the evaluation at the end of the meeting tonight. Okay. Thank you so much. Oh, actually, I believe though, for 1 second, I do think, Dr. Williams, there were 2 questions.
Oh, sure.
So I just saw one come in, but it reminded me that there might have been one earlier. Sorry. It says, should the SDIs listed in the goals also be specified in the SAS section?
Should the SDIs listed in the goals also be, is that the supplementary, where are we? SAS.
Yes.
Whoever typed
Yeah,
that, could
the
they add?
supplementary aids and services.
Well, we went over. So if we can, could we go back to that slide specifically? Uh, yep, right here. If you go over one more slide for the IEP document. All right, so here. So remember the purpose here, so SDIs, you're not going to see that, like you're not going to see the phrase specially designed instruction in the IEP. So the parts of the IEP that I shared, those particular sections, those are places where you should see more of those specialized strategies or interventions that are going to be used for your child. So you're not going to see SDI specifically, but I want to make sure you guys know what language to listen for when you're in IEP meetings that signals that, okay, the team is actually making sure that they're catering to the needs of my students specifically, because we want to make sure that the IEP is not generalized. So the specially designed instructional focus, those hints, help us to really signal and focus on and target the students, that one student specific needs, so that it's individualized. So for the sub aids, this is always a good section because this is, I feel like it's like where you get the most customized in the IEP as far as those strategies and those instructional practices that really help that student learn. So this particular section, this is a good section just to make sure that it matches your students' learning style, their personality, and you guys should definitely chime in a lot with the school team when it gets to this section. Because the current school team may not know of a strategy or instructional practice that worked in the past, whereas you guys know it's something and you can share that with the school team at the IEP meeting. That was a good question.
And then we have a couple of follow-ups. One of them was, when did STIs get introduced to the IEPs?
Specially designed instruction so you have a student who has an IEP has specially designed instruction. So they've always gone hand in hand. And it's just specially designed instruction is a phrase to make sure that it's just not generalized instruction. So remember, the I in the IEP is that individualized part. So when we say specially designed instruction, it's especially designed for that student's unique needs. So it's always been there, but you're not going to see it presented in an IEP, but SDI has always been a thing.
And then the last follow-up is it an IEP already in specialized instruction for my child? In other words, aren't we designing instruction that's best for my child given their disability?
That is a great final question. You got it. You could have did this presentation. You hit it right on the mark. So specially designed instruction is not new. That is pretty much why we developed the IEP in the first place. You're correct.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to move on, I believe. Oh, we do have someone who has a question. Is it okay if she or he comes off and asks?
Oh, for me? Sure.
I think so.
Okay.
B Gray just says, I have a question.
My daughter is not in alternative learning. She's in an accelerated learning and humanities program. I want to confirm how her SDI for functional skills is tracked. Is it in MOIEP too?
Yep. So and we could talk more on the side too. Does your child have an IEP? Just
She
wanted to make sure.
does, yes.
Yep. So that too will be the four sections I just went through. You
Mm-hmm.
should see that too. So you may not have more of that academic focus, but SDIs also go into either the social, emotional, behavioral realm too.
And also executive functioning.
Correct. Yep.
So for a student like her, are they okay? So
It sounds like we should do an IEP dive.
it are the MOIEP logs only for related services?
Yes, so you're talking about two different things. I'm going to
Okay.
put my email in the chat, and if you can email me, I would love to. We can look at the IEP together.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Thanks. Oops.
your email in the chat.
I'm
Is
gonna
it
put it in
there?
the chat now. Nope, I'm about to do it.
Okay.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
And then we also have another parent who would love to connect with you. So again, Dr. Williams will put her email in and, reach out or reach out to me and I can connect with her. But there has been some questions along the way. Takita has asked about update. How do we request for more frequent like updates and progress monitoring? And that is a conversation we've had with lots of parents. So I do think that that's something worth us having, some conversation about at future meetings.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Derek, next slide. Now I think it's Brooke. There you go. Brooke, you are up.
Okay, so it's that time of year where we are looking for new co-chairs for SECAC. Both Jingfeng and Amy will be stepping down at the end of this year. And so we are looking for two parent leaders to serve along myself and work together to advocate for our students in MCPS and also to help plan these monthly meetings along with any kind of additional committees that come out of this meeting. I know that we have started an email list so that we can start connecting outside of the monthly meetings. So I'm not going to read through this because you can all read this. And so the link so there is because the links, we can't click on any of the links. They're not working and we can't copy them. There is a QR code here. So please do that. And also I know that Mary Beth sent an email earlier this week. I think it was Tuesday, and it had the link in there as well. So we have to have three co-chairs. And so we're looking for two, and we will have elections at our May meeting. And so in this form, it's kind of like a nominating form. It asks questions about, who you are, the age of your child within MCPS, because you do have to have a student in MCPS in order to be eligible, right? Correct, Mary Beth? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's one of the bylaws.
Yeah. And so anyway, we're really excited to bring on some new new voices and so I welcome, and if anybody I can put my email in the chat also. So if you want to talk ahead of time, I will be happy to email with you or we can set up a time to meet. I'm doing that right now.
Yeah, and I think just so everybody knows, I mean, the goal is obviously, right, to find what's happening with families, where are the needs, how can the parent community connect with the school system, right? And how are we sort of bridging that gap around conversations and needs that might not be as evident on one side or the other, right? So the conversations and kind of working together collaboratively to work through those. And we've had some really great discussions this year at the end of our SECAC meetings. Some of our parents have been amazing in terms of communicating how they're advocating, going to, Annapolis and, going to board meetings and budget meetings. And really, I mean, if that's sort of your jam and what you're interested in, that this is actually a really good fit for you. I don't know if Brooke mentioned it when she did her intro, but I mean, she's the director for the Down Syndrome Network for Montgomery County. And so sort of that wide net is really what we're looking for in terms of, providing support to our special education parent community or, caregivers and everybody.
But we also want to say you don't have to be a director
No.
of another organization to be a parent chair. We don't want to scare you off at all. It just happens to be that I have a child in MCPS, and that's my job as well. And so, so we welcome, and we do want to bring a diversity into the chairs. We don't want to have everybody in, with high school students or everybody with middle school students, everybody, who has a kid with Down syndrome or autism, or we want to make sure if we can, to bring, just some diversity among special education within, our community. And so it is, we have to, and even I will say that being a chair, even just among the chairs and some of the MCPS folks, that come to the meetings, there have been great conversations just among ourselves. And it is a way for us as parents to connect with MCPS leadership. Not that you can't do that separately, but it's a set structure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Brooke.
Yeah, so okay, one more thing. Sorry, Mary Beth. So again, we are gonna vote at the next meeting. So and we will have an opportunity to, if folks can't be there, to vote offline as well. So, right?
Yep.
Something that I'm not saying anything wrong. Okay,
So if
great.
you're interested, please, complete the form. And again, as Derek said earlier, I'm not sure if you saw it in the chat, all of the presentation, he actually posted the PDF version with active links. So if you go into the chat, you can click it and open up to where we are, and all of these links then are active. I know some of you are on your phone, so that makes it more complicated. So this recording and the slideshow will be on the SECAC website. Derek usually has it cleaned up and ready to go by tomorrow, but it has to be approved. So usually it's by Friday or Monday. Okay. All right. Well, hello, there's me. So I'm Mary Beth Mansaranis. I'm the Family Support Services Coordinator. Again, glad you're all here. Next slide, please. I'm going to try to be super quick. Our big thing right now is that our Special Education Family Resource Fair is on May the 9th. It is from 10 until 1, and it's at Paintbrush High School. For those of you who have attended in the past, we have lots of great resources. We have physical handouts for families. We have over 40 community organizations that'll be there. We'll have some presentations and some workshops. We have MCPS staff who will be manning tables, be able to answer some questions. We have activities for the kids. We have lots of great raffle prizes that you'll be able to fill out. We are going to really push all of you to complete the parent survey, which is going to be a next slide. But really and truly, it's a fun day, and it's also super educational, which it's the best kind of day because it's educational and fun. So we hope that you'll be able to join us. And then this is just, again, some of the examples of who's going to be present. We do have an event website for those of you who are able to use your phones and want to go to it. There's also links on the website. So this is an important one. We have links available. We sent out an email. I hope it's gone out, but if not yet, it will soon, to the counselors and SSL supervisors at every school. We are looking for students to get their SSL hours. So for those of you who are here tonight, if you have a student who's a high schooler who needs some SSL hours, this is a great time for them to be able to help. We have a whole registration form for that. If you're an MCPS staff member who's here, we have the link for you for a table. And then we also have room for staff who just want to come and volunteer. But really, for this one, oh, it has gone out to the schools. Awesome. Thank you. So the email, though, should be pushed out to students via their MCPS emails. And then they'll be able to click on the link for the Sign Up Genius. Parents, if you're interested and you haven't seen it yet, please feel free to reach out to me probably on Monday. Let's give it a day for them to push it out. Okay, next. All right, so this is the big one. I feel like I'm standing on a pretend soapbox, but this is the Maryland State Department of Education Parent Involvement Survey. And I get it. Most people don't want to fill it out, okay? But your filling it out helps the state to see how schools and systems are supporting families and how they're not, right? So I think there's 26 areas that we're measured on. And it's really helpful to see, like, what are the things that we're doing that are actually moving the needle, and what are the things that it's either decreasing or it's staying stagnant. And the best way for us to get that information is to have enough input from parents. So last year, I think our response rate was 9%. So while we value and we'll use that 9%, there's then 91% of the families that we haven't heard from, right? So if you could take the time to fill it out. If you want to wait until the resource fair, you can do that because we'll have raffle, incentives for you to fill it out. But it's really sorry. It's really not very long, but it does provide important information. And as Dr. Jones just said, we do sort of get a report card grade on how much or how high our response rate is. So in thinking about how Montgomery County looks sort of throughout the state and other LREs, we want to make sure that it's an accurate representation of the levels of support that we are providing to families. Next slide, please. And I think at this point, I don't know how many of our community partners are here, but if you are, feel free to come off mute and let us know if you have any events or any activities happening. I know that X Minds, I think, had a meeting tonight, so I don't think that they're here. I'm going to give a second just to see.
I can just say the Down Syndrome Network of Montgomery County has several events coming up. I'm gonna put it's an easy link for you to just copy, so I will put it in the chat so that you can just copy it if you want to go to our website. But we have an events page where you can just look and see what's on the calendar, but we do have all kinds of activities coming up between now through the summer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anybody else?
I had a question. May I
Sure.
ask a question? Yep. This is Takeda Battle. Thank you for the presentation. And I had a question in regards to the survey. I took the survey. I liked it. Definitely some feedback that I'd like to share, but I'm always curious. I worked in a charter school at one point, and we always, like when we were doing enrollment, always having, outreach to individual families. And so I just wonder, sometimes you can send out a survey 15 times, and the community that we're trying to get feedback from is not responding to the email. And I'm just curious about how and what other ways is MCPS Central Office trying to do some intentional direct outreach to families. That's been a success that I've had when I've done enrollment or worked with families before. And I just know that's really important in this moment in time, just considering what, X Minds webinar was for this evening. I couldn't make it because, I'm here. I'll be able to get a recording, but just given what's happening externally in the education and special education and funding, I just want to offer just first ask and see if there's a way to drive more participation for Montgomery County.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And I think that we are certainly open to some thoughts and suggestions. I think the big thing for us is that the survey results from the family perspective, they're anonymous, right? So what we do is we push out the email to all parents who have a student with an IEP and MCPS that has the survey link. And then we just post it everywhere we can, and then provide opportunities. Certainly at the school level, we'll be, sharing with schools to offer those opportunities too, like during meetings, at the end of meetings. I mean, in thinking about keeping it confidential, and we've asked parents before, like, oh, have you had a chance to fill out the survey? And they're like, oh yeah, we've already completed it. And I'm not saying people haven't, but certainly our response rate, it's much lower than it could and or should be. So, I mean, you're not wrong, Takita. We do need as much sort of blitzing as possible. And that is a goal for us. And I feel like we've tried to do as many things as possible. I don't know, Jada, if you want to speak on that as well, but, the emails through Parent Square for parents who have a student with an IEP has been like the most direct that we can get.
Yes, thank you, Mary Beth. Yes, we've been doing that. We've also been reaching out to principals weekly since after spring break to really get them to make sure that their schools are offering opportunities for families to complete the survey if they need to do it at school using a school device. We're also working with the family engagement specialists in some of the schools as well to help with this also. But if there's any other ideas that you think we can, the results are very important after actually looking at the survey and seeing some things that would help improve our practice with families when we are conducting IEP meetings and providing our special education services to our families, to your children. I think the feedback is very helpful so that we can continue to improve on our work with you all when we're implementing our IEPs. So we've been utilizing those supports, the principals, because they are the leaders of the buildings, and also working with the family engagement specialists to help assist. And just like Mary Beth said, with utilizing times after IEP meetings or before when we're waiting for everyone to come in to give families an opportunity to complete the survey. But your voices are really important because that helps improve our practice in the work that we do for your children.
Thank you. And Dr. Jones also brought up a good point. She said there are schools that actually have like the QR codes posted so that you can go directly to the survey. And, certainly, again, we will continue to do those things. It doesn't appear that we have other community members here. I'm sure some actually are attending another meeting tonight. So next slide, please. So we have one SECAC meeting left. That's Thursday, May the 28th at 7 o'clock. It'll be on Zoom as usual. And we have a link for tonight's meeting, which I'm wondering now if people can actually access it since we're in presentation mode. But we will follow up. Many of you know that on our agenda tonight was for Dr. Cage to come. She was going to share some special education updates. And unfortunately, she's been stuck in another meeting. So she sent a message saying, she apologizes for that, but she will attend May's meeting. So we had some follow up that she was going to share with us. If you have anything else that you have questions or concerns about, we have the next month. Feel free to reach out to me. And yes, somebody mentioned putting it in the princess. Sorry, I'm trying to read the chat too. Putting the message about the survey into the principals into their newsletters or their Sunday messages, and we have asked principals to do that. So there are many that are already doing so. And if yours isn't, then that's just a demographic for us to think about also, right? Like making sure that all of our schools are getting that messaging. But again, so our next meeting will be May the 28th. if you can fill out that feedback form, that would be great. But I understand for some of you, you might not get to it. But it would be great if you did. So I think that's actually, is that it for us, Derek? Yeah, so this one, we were going to have discussion closing remarks, which we can actually do. I think at this point, if you are an MCPS staff member who presented tonight, we'd like to thank you for your time and thank you for your wisdom. We appreciate, Dr. Williams sharing your email. We appreciate that. And for Ashley and Dawn, thank you for sharing yours as well and your expertise. So everybody from MCPS, you are free to go at this point. We appreciate all of you. And then Brooke and I will stay on for some parents if you have anything you want to discuss over like the next 15 minutes or so. Our interpreters will have to leave at 8:30.